Welcome back to part 4. I'm going to start by adding little white hairs to the edge of the ear, of the left ear, with my 211 New Pastel. Underneath my hand I have a sheet of glassine to protect my work. Glassine is slippery and it doesn't allow the pastel to stick to it, so it's perfect for covering up your pastel work to protect it. So I'm adding short little hairs all the way to the top of the ear. I'm going to use my 233 raw sienna to add some little bright orangey yellow hairs right underneath the white ones, pulling it ever so slightly into the white hairs that are above. Now I'm going to use the edge of my black New Pastel to add little short black hairs into the background on top of the ear. And now I'm using my white New Pastel to add little hairs on the outside edge of the ear, just gently pulling them up into the background. We're going to paint this ear just like we did the right ear. Here I'm using my black charcoal pencil to pull a few black hairs up into the background. By doing this, we're kind of weaving one color into another, and it makes for a much more realistic animal. I'm using the edge of my white 211 pastel to draw the hairs in on that side. Just putting in a few fine hairs at the base of the ear. And drawing in a few more hairs on the edge. Here I'm carefully adding the hairs to the inside of the left ear using a very sharp 211 New Pastel. I've moved my glassine so I can rest my hand easily on it, and I'm drawing in the little hairs and rotating my stick as I go, making sure I go in the correct direction. So I'm carefully drawing in these little hairs and moving my hand as I need to to draw them out. So I need an angle to curve them out, so I moved my hand, and that works a little better. And I'm rotating my stick. I'm using the point now. The side of this stick, using the edge, will give you a very fine hair, but you can draw with the points, and the point will give you a nice fine curve. It's useful for drawing horses' manes and things like that. So I'm using the point, and then I'm switching back to the edge. Sometimes I draw the hair by pulling it from the inside edge out, and sometimes I do it the reverse way, going from the outside edge in, just whatever works best. I'm drawing the little hairs on the inside now. Now I'm using my black charcoal pencil to draw some dark hairs and areas from the white hairs into the edge of the ear, which is helping to blend those hairs together nicely. I'm adding a few more hairs to the ear. And I'm really liking the way that looks. I'm drawing a few little short hairs on the edge of the cat's forehead, and I'm using my dark brown 353 to draw a few dark brown hairs up into the white hair. I'm going to speed this up while I continue to add the little white hairs on the left side of the cat's forehead. Now I'm adding a few random white hairs with my white charcoal pencil. I'm also using my black 6B charcoal pencil to add a few hairs as well. I'm going to speed this up a little bit for you while I continue to add hairs to the left side of the cat's face with my white 211 New Pastel. Now I'm going to make the hair longer as we work down the cat's face. I'm also going to change the direction to a more downward direction as we work down the cat's face. The hair is quite short up at the top, and then it gets longer as we work further down. This area is very short as it goes out and meets the background. And the hair over the eyes is a little bit longer. This section, I have turned my cat over on its side to make it easier for my hand to place the strokes. So I'm continuing to add them on the side of the cat's face. It's much easier in this position for me to draw them out into the background. Here I'm adding those tiny little hairs that come out underneath the eye. They're very short. I'm going to take my time putting them in. Take your time when adding these little tiny short hairs in between the black areas. You can use the 211 white, or you can use a 299 gray. Let's speed this up just a little bit while I work on these tiny little hairs. But when you do it, take your time, go slow. You get tired, like I've told you before, just take a break. We're back in real time now, and I'm going to start adding the little hairs, fine little hairs on the muzzle of the Bobcat. I have a very, very sharp 211, and you can see I'm using very light pressure and making very fine strokes to add in those little hairs that go in between the whisker holes. So the hairs go around and under those holes. Now I'm going around the nose down to the bottom of the mouth with my strokes. So I'm doing each row of little hairs. I've done the row under the first group of holes, and now I've done the second row. And now I'm going to do that third row of little white hairs. I'm going to speed this up a little bit while I add those hairs on the left side. Working on these hairs. I'm still using my white 211 and carefully pulling out the hairs. They're a little longer right in this area than they have been on the side of the face. The hair is longer in this area, so I'm taking my time and I'm using kind of a zigzag stroke to go back and forth and make the hair just really elegant. I think these hairs in this area are very graceful. It's one of the reasons I enjoy painting fur. It's just very beautiful. You can get a very beautiful effect by taking your time. And you can see I draw some of the hairs out longer. If you hold your stick further back between your fingers, you can get a more graceful curve to your longer hairs. We're going to turn our cat back around to finish painting his fur. I am finishing up the short hairs on the muzzle and moving on to the side of his face. The hairs in this area get a lot longer. You can see that I'm drawing them longer and rotating my stick often to get those nice, crisp, long hairs in that area. Notice how when I draw the fur, I cross one hair over the other, another hair occasionally. Now I'm using the edge of my new pastel 229 black to put some black hairs back into the white, kind of break it up. I can reshape the area as needed this way if I get too many white hairs. It's very, very useful to add the dark hairs back into the light ones. I'm continuing to work on these hairs. This is a particularly nice area that I enjoyed working on very much. I hope you do too. I'm adding a little more black into there as needed to shape that area. I'm using my 6B charcoal pencil now to draw back into the white area a few fine hairs. It's not as dark as the new pastel, and that makes it useful for doing this when you want to make a slight difference but not too great a difference in the hair. So I'm adding a few fine hairs with that. Darker in the middle here, in between the two groups of hair. So I added a little dark in that area. Using the 9B graphite pencil is another way to add shadowing in your fur. So I've shown you several different ways to do that. With the 259 gray, we add black with the 229 new pastel, and also with the charcoal pencil. So it would be your choice as to what you need in your picture. I'm using this because I want to slightly gray down the area. I don't want an enormous amount of gray, so I don't use my new pastel. I just use my pencil. Now I'm going to use my white charcoal pencil to add a few hairs, add some extra drama to my painting. I've added a few more white hairs to my cat on the left side, and using my charcoal pencil to add a few, and now I'm darkening the nostrils with the 229 new pastel. Going back and touching up some of these areas. As we're just about finished with our cat. So now we're going to start looking at it and adjusting it, and getting it just the way we would like. Using the 229 to darken certain areas. I'm using my 353 cordovan to add a touch of brown to the whisker holes. I can see it in the reference photo, so I want to add that to my painting. So I'm just using a touch. Going around each whisker hole, adding a little bit of brown. Using my 229 black to darken some of the areas. I'm using a very sharp white to add a few more hairs. I'm actually just brightening them. I'm pushing a little harder into the areas some of the areas I've already gone into, and that makes the hairs a little bit whiter and a little bit brighter. Also at the bottom, I'm using a very sharp 211 new pastel to pull some hairs out into the background. My 229 black, perhaps you've noticed I got a new one. Using that sharp edge, mine had grown very small. So I'm also using the new one down at the bottom to add in a few more black hairs. At this point, I'm looking around my painting, seeing what needs to be finished or what I can make better. I'm going to add some more hairs on the left side. A few more hairs down at the bottom. Using my 211 white to add a few hairs, pulling it into the background on the edge of the body of the cat. And I need some darker color, so I'm using a black Rembrandt 700.5 on its sanded flat side, which adds some beautiful dark color in that area. And now I'm going to add a few more strokes of hair. I'm adding little touches of color here and there as the cat needs it. Now I'm using my 233 raw sienna to add some light colored hair into the body of the bobcat. We haven't addressed this area yet, so we need to add some hair back there. We added some dark spots with our black earlier, and now we're going to add some lighter hair. I'm adding a little more white fur down at the bottom and a few accents into the main body of the cat. Not a lot, but just a few. The back of this cat has a blend of all the colors in his fur. It's kind of almost a brindle. It's a real mottled color of fur. I'm still adding a few white accents, just a few, very carefully. Now we need to darken this area, and I'm using the 704.3 dark gray to go over the back of the cat, and I'm going over the corners as well as the background, help blend things in. I'm adding some more blue. This is the 508.5 Prussian blue. Kind of getting some spots out with my fingers. You can kind of rub them in, or sometimes you have to blow them out with the camera blower. I'm adding black over the tufts on his ears. Now it's time to add the whiskers. I'm going to use my white charcoal pencil. Now I didn't get a very bright line, so I'm going to go back and get a very sharp new pastel stick and try that again. As you can see, I get a very sharp, bright line. So be sure and make sure that your stick is sharpened. And rotate it as you go to get these nice bright lines. Now I'm going to use my 9B pencil to make that one whisker that looks a little thick thinner. By going around the edges of it, you can kind of make it thinner. It's a good trick for future reference. to know how to do that. I'm going to use my white charcoal pencil to draw the whiskers on the other side. It works a little better on this side than it did the other one. Sometimes you have to go over them more than once. I decided though they needed to be a little brighter, so I got my new pastel stick and using that. Adding the whiskers over the eyes. And I'm going to use the 9B graphite to tidy up any whiskers I think are a little too wide. After looking around the project, I've decided that whisker down at the bottom right is still a little fat, so I'm covering it up with the blue, and I'm going to redo it with the white new pastel. There's always a way to fix things. Let's see if it looks a little better this time. And I think it does. I hope you've enjoyed this project of the Bobcat. Please let me know how you did. And please go to www.kwit.com for more video projects.